Yes, hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Ancluiche. With me, Seamus Brady, your host, and I'm joined once again by Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman. We have a bumper weekend ahead of us, don't we, Matthew? I mean, 2 All-Ireland club finals. You know, it doesn't feel long ago that we were still in the county championships, but here we are, the final two. Glen against BRIGIDS and O'Loughlin Gaels against St. Thomas's, the last club fixtures of the season. I mean, what a year it's been.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on again, Seamus. Yeah, in fairness, when you look at the hurling in particular, you wouldn't have predicted Thomas's and O'Loughlin Gaels to reach the final. Going back all the way, like even O'Loughlin Gaels beating Ballyhead Shamrocks. I remember I was at a Cork game and looking at the phone, looking at that scoreline, it just shocked me, to be honest. And you could see the celebrations from the O'Loughlin Gaels fans afterwards when they won that. And Thomas's beating Ballygunner was arguably an even bigger shock as well. And we would have expected Ballygunner, Ballyhead to be here in 3 days' time, but no, it is the two unlikely suspects, if you want to call them. It is O'Loughlin Gaels and St. Thomas's. And to be honest, in hurling, either way, there's going to be massive celebrations whoever wins the game, and it's going to be absolutely incredible in its own right. In the football, there's one team that you would expect to win the game, but at the same time, they're going for their first All-Ireland title, and the side there, the underdogs, are going for their second All-Ireland title, their first in 10 years, or 11 years, should I say. So this is going to be an absolutely brilliant battle, in fairness, between Glen and BRIGIDS. And yeah, looking forward to the two games on Sunday.
Yeah, it's just going to be a cracking day of action. Like, I mean, a lot of people are expected to attend. A lot of neutrals are expected to attend. Like Glen against St. BRIGIDS, it is two teams that you'd see the appeal and rooting for them. Glen based off the fact of what happened last year, and St. BRIGIDS at the fact that they've been underdogs now for a while. So we have a comment in here from Denise. Hello again. I hope Glen win this weekend. Okay, so not exactly a neutral there. I personally don't mind who wins. I think both teams have definitely emptied themselves into the championship. Matthew, do you have any slight team that you would pick to win?
I think Glen should win it. They're the obvious favourites, to be honest with you. And even when you look at their run to the final, Scottstown, I know they didn't play Kilcoo this year, but they played Kilcoo last season. Naomh Quinlan, Kilmacud Crokes, even Slotneil in the Derry Championship, and even Erin's Own Cargan in the quarter final. Let's not forget, they won that game by 4 points, and Tomas McCann got sent off early on in the first half in that game. So that could have ended up differently in many ways. Whereas BRIGIDS, other than the Corfin, Castlehaven, and Boyle games, it's been really smooth sailing, more or less, for BRIGIDS in their club championship run. But yeah, I just think Glen, the run they've been on, beating the sides of Kilmacud, Scottstown on their way to the final, I think that makes them clear favourites in this game. But then again, even looking at I know stats don't paint the whole picture, but even looking at BRIGIDS' defence in this campaign, they've only conceded 3 goals. They've only conceded 1 goal to Coolera Strandhill from Sligo, which the game didn't matter at that point. I think Coolera scored in the second half of that game, and 2 against Corfin. They haven't conceded a goal in any other championship game this season, which shows their defensive capabilities. And the fact that Glen don't really have a standout forward as well, maybe that's an avenue where BRIGIDS can beat Glen. But having said that, BRIGIDS have had very good forwards down through the championship games, like Bobby Nugent, like Ben O'Carr, like Brian Durbin, like Kieran Sugru, but they're coming up against man mountains on Sunday. Michael Warnock was absolutely superb in the semi-final against Kilmacud Crokes. The 2 Mulhollands that went back, Ewan and Call, were absolutely incredible. And Kieran McFaul was missing last year for the game against Kilmacud. He's back now. He's back with a vengeance for Croke Park. So, yeah, it should be very, very interesting. Indeed, even Ryan Dugan, he got a slight injury against Kilmacud. I'm not sure he's going to recover, but if he is, that's going to be a titanic battle as well. And yes, Eddie Nolan and Shane Conan have played well in midfield for BRIGIDS. They're coming up against, well, the best midfield partnership in the club championship in Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass. And Glass, I've said it on, I think, your last show, Aaron's last show in the All-Ireland semi-final preview. Glass needs a good game to announce himself for Derry or Watty, Graham's Glen. He needs a monstrous game because he's a brilliant footballer, and he got that against Kilmacud, in fairness. Can he back it up in the final? There's a lot of narratives in this final as well as the hurling, but this final should be very, very interesting. Especially, I'd be looking forward to see how BRIGIDS' defence particularly performs against this Watty, Graham's Glen side.
Yeah, and it is such an interesting battle, and like we are gonna, go into it step by step. You mentioned about Glen, we mentioned about BRIGIDS. we're going to start with Glen's journey to the final. Like what exactly were the key stages in making it? And to do that, let's go back to last year. They lost the All-Ireland final by a hair's breadth. I mean, they had that chance right at the end. They got off to a great start in that game against Kilmacud Crokes. And then Kilmacud took over for a long period of the game, to the point where Crokes were the deserving All-Ireland champions. And we have a comment here. Greetings from Mexico. Great channel. Thank you very much, sir. But basically, like that All-Ireland final, Kilmacud Crokes took over after Glen made the amazing start. And like, what do you think Glen can take from last year's All-Ireland final experience to maybe help them this time around?
Maybe to step up to the stage more, because I mentioned Conor Glass there, and Kevin McGorty is very, very very knowledgeable on Conor Glass in general on the JMAC podcast. Check that podcast if you haven't already. He was actually saying that Conor Glass, for Derry and for Watty Glen, in certain games in big stages doesn't really perform. Like, you looked at the Kilmacud game last year, you looked at the Galway All-Ireland semi-final in 2022, those two games he pointed towards in particular. But when you looked at the Kilmacud game from last year compared to the semi-final this year, there was a huge difference in how Conor Glass played. And I think he needs to produce that same performance again. And as well as that, this is a different situation for Glen now than last year, because last year they were going in against Shane Walsh, Paul Mannion, Darragh Mullins, and brilliant Kilmacud players. This year, they're going in as the clear favourites. That could win on the team as well. That could win on the confidence. And BRIGIDS will be going in under no pressure. So, so Watty Glen need to calm it down, do the simple things right, and get over the line. And I said on our podcast earlier on this week that it's almost like it could go two ways for the 2021 All-Ireland finals. For example, when you look at Cork, were the underdogs against Limerick, Cork folded. They absolutely, went under the pressure, and Limerick, held the pressure, held their own under the pressure. They got on with it. When you look at the football final, Mayo were the favourites, and they crumbled against Tyrone. If Watty Glen need more of the Limerick attitude than the Mayo attitude. I do think Glen have that. It is a question mark, because last season it's a hard one to judge. They were the underdogs going into it. They're now the favourites. Let's see how they counteract this. But even their run to the final, I would say since the Slot-Neil game, every side has gone after a throat, other than Mahra felt in the Derry final. To be honest with you, they won that 113 to 7 points. But in the other games, they beat Slot-Neil by 2 points. They beat Erin's Own Carrigan by 4, and Erin's Own Carrigan had a guy sent off, Tomas McCann, early in the first half. They beat Naomh Quinnell by 1 point. They beat Scottstown by 2, and they beat Kilmacud by 1. These are tight games. And it actually could help a team in many ways. And I mentioned on my own podcast for the semi-final preview when I had you on about it didn't transpire to be that way, but the Castlehaven and BRIGIDS game, but this example could be going into it as well. Glen have had a battle. They've had a target on their back, I'd say, since October. BRIGIDS have gone through the run to the final easier than Watty Glen have, and I think that could prove a difference on Sunday. And the fact as well, Glen have come up against much tougher teams than BRIGIDS have had. So it's all for Glen to win it now, but the question is for them, can they handle the pressure, the favourites tag on the day?
That's it. And like, there's a very good recent example, which I think this game might go relatively similar to. Ballyhale Shamrocks and Dunloy in the All-Ireland hurling final last year in the club championship. Ballyhale were roaring favourites, and Dunloy gave them an awful scare, and Ballyhale kind of regrouped and came back and won that game. And I think like this game could be something along those lines. Like, if you look at BRIGIDS, they haven't had to go through the tests that maybe like that Glen have. And what's gas is that if you were to say, okay, if it was Kilmacud Crokes versus St. Brigid's in this All-Ireland club final, or if they had played against each other in the All-Ireland semi-finals, who would you have backed to win that game? If we're being honest, probably would have leaned towards Kilmacud Crokes. I know hindsight, like BRIGIDS are here in the final, but Glen cannot get wrapped up in that we beat Kilmacud Crokes, therefore we're going to beat BRIGIDS in the final. They cannot get wrapped up in that, because playing Kilmacud Crokes in the fog like that on a horrible night is so different to playing against St. Brigid's in Croke Park, wide open pitch. It does change the game. And Brigid's are coming in a perfect mindset. They're coming in, as you said, nobody expects anything from them. If they go in and give a brilliant performance in the final and Glen just are a little bit better than them on the day, nobody's going to point fingers at them. But if Glen lose this final, everyone's going to point at them and say, this was the one you should have won. This is an All-Ireland you've left behind you, everything like that. So in a way, Matthew, would you rather be in Brigid's position rather than Glen's if you were a footballer going into this final?
100% I'd rather be in Brigid's camp, because like when you look at the dynamics going into it, Brigid's are thinking to themselves, this was a brilliant win against Castlehaven. The club will be absolutely delighted with this. And it's a trip to Croke Park, and there's no pressure on us. We're the underdogs going into this. Whereas Glen, after what happened last year in particular, when they claimed they were cheated, and to be fair, they were cheated in a way. Dara Mullen was on the pitch and Paul Mannion was as well the 17th player. But Kilmacud were better on the day. And this is a chance for Watty Rams Glen to prove they are the top dogs in the country. If they don't win on Sunday, I think there'll be, as you said there'll be a lot of questions asked. With their talent that they have, Conor Glass, Emmett Bradley, Danny Tallon, Ewan Mulholland, all them players have to step up. There's no, and you could argue maybe in the early stages of Ulster against Aaron Cargan and Niamh Quinn, they could have got away with performing badly and winning by a point. But I'll tell you this, they will not get away with a poor performance against Brigid's and get away with a win, because Brigid's have the players to punish them. Ben O'Carroll, one of them, Eddie Nolan, Brian Stack in defence, and it'll be interesting to see where Brian Stack goes on as well. Will it be Ethan Doherty?
Who would you put him on?
You never know.
I would put him on Ethan Doherty.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, it's a hard one actually, because everything ticked towards Ethan Doherty. Like he's the,
because they didn't score that freely in the forwards against Crokes. They don't. Like you did up your scores. They don't have a Shane Walsh. They don't have a Brian Hurley that you need to put someone on. And maybe that person will reveal himself on the final. Maybe Danny Tallon will play the best football we've ever seen him play. But I just don't think it's as nailed on banker that you need to put Brian Stack on him. And I think it's a game where you could actually put Brian Stack out in the half-back line or around the middle and let him help the lads deal with Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley and Kieran McFall, and that he could get stuck in around there. It's an interesting game for Brian Stack. I personally would put him on Ethan Doherty out around the middle.
And maybe that could be to Brigid's advantage as well, having a player of Brian Stack's caliber pushing up. Maybe it will. And we'll have to see. But even their midfield, maybe even he goes as the third midfielder to help out Shane Canaan and Eddie Nolan. And don't get me wrong, Shane Canaan and Eddie Nolan are excellent midfielders, Roscommon inter-county players for a reason. But if Brian Stack is in there and coming up against Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass, that is what you need, because they are going to give it to Emmett Bradley and Conor Glass. And funnily enough, Emmett Bradley's probably been the better of the two so far at the club championship. But Conor Glass is the highest caliber. So both of them are capable of good performances. And even McFall, like it'd be interesting if there's actually a three midfielder battle with Kieran McFall, Conor Glass, Emmett Bradley against Eddie Nolan, Shane Canaan, and Brian Stack. That's a battle.
That is a battle. And it could be game deciding. Really could be. And then the other way that I'm going to turn it to you now is Ryan Duggan did a great job on Shane Walsh. And then it wasn't Ryan Duggan, it was Michael Warnock was on Shane Walsh, and Ryan Duggan was on Paul Mannion. Who takes Ben O'Carroll?
I would have to think Michael Warnock, because even look at his post-match interview, even on RT Radio after the Kilmacud game, he was saying that he's just not going to give Shane Walsh an inch. He's not going to give him, like, even the fog there that day. He actually said that if he knew where the ball was, he's never going to tell Shane Walsh where it was. He's that kind of guy to get inside your head, and I think he will do a brilliant job on Brian Stack, or Ben O'Carroll, should I say. But you could then put Ryan Duggan on Bobby Nugent or Brian Durham. Who goes on Kieran Sugru? Then that's the question. Would it be Cathal Mulholland? Because Ewan the other Mulholland seems to go up and down the pitch, so he's not usually a man marker per se. So you'd have to imagine Conor Mulholland goes on Kieran Sugru. Then you look at the other forwards, there isn't much there for Brigid after that. Conor Carville, I would imagine, would take Brian Derwin, and then Bobby Nugent will be taken by Ryan Dugan. So Glen, I think, are well set on their matchups. And it's going to be interesting to see what Brian Stack does. So I'm genuinely intrigued what he does. Will he push up at the midfield? Will he go back on Danny Talon? Will he stick with Ethan Doherty? We'll have to see. It should be very, very interesting on Sunday.
That's it. And we have a funny comment in here. Are you the lad that played pool in Pats? Yeah, I had many games of pool on the St. Pat's pool tables in Java. Quality spot if you've never been. But moving on from that onto other Brigid's forwards. You mentioned Bobby Nugent, you mentioned Brian Derwin. They were very impressive in the opening few minutes against Castlehaven as well. And then the likes of Conor Hand, Robbie Dolan, like they're really, really important as well. They chip in with a couple of crucial scores. Like, if you had to nail it down, key matchups, mano, like who do you think is the key matchups? Is for me, it is, remember that you listed off the 3v3 in the midfield. That's the key for me as to who wins the game. It's who can supply their forward line with the most ball. I think, if I have to be honest here, I think Glen have the better defense, and I think they have the better midfield. You could argue they maybe have the better goalkeeper too. But I think Brigid's have the better forwards.
Yeah.
And I think that then leaves it down to what type of game gets played. If we get a low-scoring game where it's a bit of an arm wrestle, I fancy Glen to take it by 4 or 5 points. I really do. I think Glen are just so used to being like, okay, we're playing slow, methodical football, are we? That's fine. We've been doing this all throughout the Ulster Championship, and we've beaten Kilmacud Crokes playing this way, we've beaten Scottstown playing this way. But I think if it's helter-skelter and it's who's going to score more than the others, I think Brigid's have more quality in their forward line than Glen do. So I think if it's a high-scoring game, I actually back Brigid's.
Yeah, I kind of would to that extent as well. But then again, yes, Brigid's have had a better forward line going into this game. But you see what Danny Talon did in the first few minutes of last year's All-Ireland final. And it's hard really to remember that when you go back over the year 2023. But he scored an absolutely brilliant goal at Grove Park, where he says dummy, I think, on one of the Kilmacud Crokes defenders, I think it was Tim Clancy, correct me if I'm wrong, where he just bounces the ball, goes through and goal, bangs it in past Conor Verris, an unbelievable finish. And Danny Talon has the experience of playing at Croke Park, whereas Ben O'Carroll, when was the last time actually? He played against Dublin in the group stage. So, Danny Talon has played in Croke Park, I think, twice actually for Glen. He played against Mike Cullen in last year's All-Ireland semi-final as well last year. Ben O'Carroll, in contrast, I think has only played there once in that group stage game against Dublin. So maybe that could be a factor as well, playing on the Croke Park pitch. You've seen it, I don't know, did anybody watch the intermediate final last week now, but it seemed as if St. Patrick Cullyhanna players from Armagh were much more used to the Croke Park surface than Kilnamatra from Cork were. Because like Aidan Nugent, Ross McQuillan, Jason Duffy would have been more used to playing Croke Park than the likes of Dan Deneen and Ty Corkery, for example. So that could be a factor too. Brigid's probably won't be as used to Croke Park as Watty Graham's Glen are. Conor Glass has played Croke Park many a time over the last few years. Emmett Bradley, I'd imagine, has as well. Ethan Doherty has as well. So the names on this list are well used to the Croke Park pitch. I think that's going to provide a big factor too. But I agree with you on your point that Brigid's have a better forward line. Like Ben O'Carroll, for example, 7 goals, 32 points in the whole championship. It's just ridiculous scoring, isn't it? And it's going to be hard for Watty Graham's Glen to stop him. But this is what makes this game so intriguing, because Glen have the better defence, but Brigid's have the better attack. It'd be interesting to see how Brigid's attack performs well against this Brigid's defence, because yes, Castlehaven and Corofin are good teams, but they don't necessarily have brilliant man markers as Watty Graham's Glen have. Yeah. So in that aspect, it's going to be very interesting to see how the likes of Ben O'Carroll, the Bobby Nugents, the Brian Derwins perform against these mass Watty Graham's Glen defence.
Yeah. Okay. So we've ran through it, and I think we've highlighted the key points. decision time. If you were to give your prediction of a summary of what type of game that we're going to expect, what type of game do you expect, and who do you expect to come out on top?
I expect a cagey game. I expect it to be low scoring because of the way Watty Glen have the better defence, and the favourites for this game are Watty Glen, and what they want to do is to sit back and get some pressure. And what Watty Glen are capable of, and it showed in the Kilmacud game and in some aspects against Scottstown later on. Once they sit back, they rob the ball inside the 45 or between the 45 and the 65, and they break fast. Eaton Doherty is one lad that absolutely burns for pace going up. Danny Talon the same. Conor Glass, Emmett Bradley. The energy of these guys is absolutely incredible. I would back Watty Glen to win this game. I think it'll be about 3-4 points, but I think it'll be very, very close, probably up until half time. I wouldn't be surprised if Brigid led at half time. But what would make the difference? I didn't mention this, obviously, the third quarter. You looked at Brigid's third quarter against Castlehaven, it was poor. They didn't score anything. And Castlehaven, if Castlehaven didn't allow Brigid to score in that time, imagine what Watty Glen can do. Because Glen are a lot better team than Castlehaven are. And you looked at what Watty Glen did in 10 minutes of the third quarter against Kilmacud Crokes. They pushed on. And I just honestly think they took their eye off the ball against Kilmacud in the last few minutes. That got them back into the game. And they struggled towards the end of it because of it. So it'll be interesting to see the third quarter. I think Glen will have the edge in that particular facet of play. And that is why I'm going to back Watty Glen to win this game by about 3 or 4 points. But I would not be surprised at the slightest if Brigid led at half-time in this game.
Yeah, and you know what? We're either going to be both geniuses or we're both going to be holding our heads in our hands, because I actually think Glen by 3 as well is exactly the way that I was going with. I think that the first half will be very tight, similar to how you think. I think Brigid will maybe lead by a point at halftime. They'll put on a little surge towards the break. It will look like Glen are maybe letting it slip away. Brigid will turn off in the third quarter like they did against Castlehaven. Glen will get a few crucial scores. They'll move ahead by 2 or 3 points and they'll hold on towards the end. And I think they'll have like a Carl Lacey, Donegal v Kerry 2012 style point where it will, be the icing on the cake, the insurance point that will put them 3 ahead or something and finish the game off. It's Glen's time. They have to do it. Like when you look at the last year's final, the way they lost to Kilmacud Crokes, they felt robbed. Even though Kilmacud were the better team on the day, they felt robbed, rightfully so, when you look at the 17 lads on the pitch. But now they're back in the final again. There's no excuses. They've beaten Kilmacud Crokes. They're up against St. Brigid's now. St. Brigid's are coming in as underdogs. They're not going to fear them at all. But if Glen don't win this one, it will be an All-Ireland left behind them. And they need to avail of the opportunity that they have. And I think they will. I think they're going to win by 3 points. But it's going to be a fascinating game to watch either way. And